we expect to have unblinded data from the first 45 patients before year end. In fact, by the time we have the data scrubbed and unlocked for those first 45 patients, we expect the momentum built with all of these sites will have us completing the entire Part A of the trial, which will be up to 90 patients, by early 2026.
Welcome back to another Virtual Investor What This Means segment. My name is Janine Thomas, and I am CEO of JTCIR. Today, we are featuring Moleculin Biotech, and I am very pleased to be joined by Walter Klemp. He is Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the company. Welcome, Wally.
Hey, glad to be here, Janine. Thank you.
So happy to have you. Before we get started, I just want to inform our audience that Moleculin Bio is listed on NASDAQ and trades under the ticker MBRX. And during today's discussion, the company will be making forward-looking statements, and actual results could differ materially from those forward-looking statements. Some of the factors that could cause actual results to differ materially from these contemplated by such forward-looking statements are discussed in the periodic reports Moleculin files with the Securities and Exchange Commission. These documents are available in the Investors section of the company's website and on the Securities and Exchange Commission's website, and we encourage you to review those documents carefully. While you are gearing up for an exciting 2025 with the launch of your Miracle pivotal study for the treatment of second-line relapsed and refractory acute myeloid leukemia, or AML, can you please speak to how those preparations are going?
You bet. It's really exciting, Janine. And what some investors may not know is just how much work goes into gearing up for a global registration trial. And when we say registration, we mean that the trial is intended to be used for new drug approval by the FDA and equivalent authorities in Europe and beyond. This means we need to be working with FDA audited clinical sites, and with the global reach that we're targeting, you need a global CRO, or contract research organization, to manage the process, including site initiation, site monitoring, data management, and safety oversight and reporting. Now, to date, we've selected over 25 sites and expect that before the trial is done, we may have over 70 sites active. A number of site initiation visits have already been completed, and we still expect the first patient to be treated this quarter. At the same time, behind the scenes, drug distribution depots are being set up in strategic locations around the world, with drug labeled in the local languages for each country and ready to be shipped on a moment's notice. In the EU, there's a new system called CTIS, or CTIS, and that stands for Clinical Trials Information System. And although it requires a bit of lead time and paperwork, once the CTIS process is completed, the process for starting up individual member states is now completely unified, and it's fairly streamlined. In the US, we've already amended our trial protocol consistent with the guidance we got from the FDA, and we have IRB approval. So the remaining lead time here is getting individual institutional ethics committee sign-offs and negotiating hospital contracts. All of this work is intense and complex, but we believe we're on track to reach the unblinding of the first 45 subjects this year and completion of the entire 90-patient Part A of the trial by the first half of 2026.
Well, Wally, certainly exciting and impressive. I know you just returned from a trip around the world, and I mean literally around the world, meeting with clinical sites to have them involved in the Miracle pivotal study. How was that trip, and what was the reception like from the physicians with whom you met?
Wow, the meetings we've had over the last few months have been tremendous and inspiring. I've personally met with over 30 investigators in 11 countries in this process so far, and I'm happy to say that the vast majority of investigators are very excited to participate in this trial. Virtually all investigators acknowledge that Annamycin could fill a significant unmet need for AML patients. Now, that said, some of those investigators view the control arm of our trial to frankly be a challenge, and they would prefer that all of their patients could receive Annamycin. But Unfortunately, it's just not possible to do that while also satisfying the FDA's requirement for a blinded, randomized trial. Bottom line, though, those meetings have only increased our confidence in achieving our recruitment goals, and they frankly reinforced how important Annamycin could be to AML patients.
Wally, just to add, can you discuss the recent Cura oncology data? And were there any discussions with the KOLs with whom you met around targeted therapies and how Annamycin compares?
Sure. The Cura data and their recently announced partnering deal are they're quite telling. Cura parsed out the performance of their targeted AML therapy in patients who have relapsed from or were non responsive to venetoclax. Now, as you know, roughly half of the AML population is typically treated with a combination of venetoclax and a hypomethylating agent, typically azacitidine. Unfortunately, only about a third of the patients treated will succeed with venetoclax, and those who don't are considered virtually untreatable with less than 3 months to live. So it's understandable why Cura would want to focus on their performance in these, frankly, desperate patients. But unfortunately, they reported a CRC rate of only 36% in these patients. And this was apparently not on what we call an intent to treat basis. And what I mean by that is they may have excluded patients in the cohort who didn't receive full treatment. Notably, they didn't report a complete remission rate, which is by far the most important measure of efficacy. And that's possibly because they didn't have any complete responders. Now, by comparison, in the relapsed refractory ven-aza patients that we treated in our last trial, we reported a CRC rate of 60% and a complete remission rate of 40%. And this was on an intent to treat basis. And frankly, it included a patient who didn't receive full treatment per protocol. So, in a larger population, these numbers could be better. Now, both the Cura data and ours are based on small sample size. So they need to be considered preliminary findings. But at least based on these initial data, Annamycin is way outperforming Cura's targeted therapy. Now, Cura lost about half of their market cap after announcing the finalization of their partnering deal, which suggests that the market was expecting a better deal than the one that was struck. That said, they're still close to $1 billion market cap, which is just one more example of why we have such high expectations for Moleculin's market value once we start announcing data from our phase 3 trial this year.
Holly, it sounds like there is a lot of excitement for your miracle trial in the AML community. So, given this positive sentiment from the KOLs, how do you think this will translate into the discussions you are having with potential partners?
I can tell you that several things are happening. We're having a higher incidence of inbound interest from potential partners, and the nature of our discussions is becoming more focused. In particular, it's becoming clear that the 45 patient data readout could be a pivot point for some big pharma players. I would also say that there's been a bit of a sea change that ties back to the increase in key opinion leaders who are now lining up to support what we're doing. In fact, investors can see this for themselves by watching the recording of our recent KOL event. And in our corporate presentation deck available on our website, we've included some of their most important comments and endorsements. Now, this sort of ties back into your earlier question about targeted therapies. Only a few years ago, these KOLs would have said the AML community was looking to targeted therapies as the most promising way to address the huge unmet need in AML. Today, that's all changed. And we believe the investment community just has not caught up with this reality yet. Targeted therapies, frankly, have been a big disappointment. And in the meantime, venetoclax, which is a non targeted chemotherapy, has been pulling up the slack and generating billions in revenue for AbbVie in the process. And now we believe Annamycin is in a position to help more AML patients than all of the targeted therapies combined.
Wally, you've shared a lot of important information today. So before we close, can you remind investors what they can expect from a timeline perspective as to the start of the study and when we can expect to see data?
Sure, we continue to expect the first patient to be treated in this first quarter. So that will be a big announcement when it happens. More importantly, as the CTIS application is approved in the EU and as contracts are finalized in the US, a large number of additional sites are expected to come online mid-year, which is why we expect to have unblinded data from the first 45 patients before year end. In fact, by the time we have the data scrubbed and unlocked for those first 45 patients, we expect the momentum built with all of these sites will have us completing the entire Part A of the trial, which will be up to 90 patients by early 2026. As you can tell, we are expecting things to move very quickly for Moleculin in 2025.
Well, Wally, congratulations on all your progress, and it is certainly gearing up to be an exciting 2025 for Moleculin. And with that, this concludes our What This Means segment featuring Moleculin Biotech. I would like to extend a huge thank you to Wally Klemp for joining us today, and I'd also like to thank our audience for viewing this segment. And as a reminder, Moleculin trades on NASDAQ under the ticker MBRX. And if you like what you saw today, I encourage you to visit moleculin.com for more information on the company, to sign up to follow the company to receive their alerts, as well as follow their social channels to stay current on the latest information. You can also visit virtualinvestorco.com for a replay of today's event, as well as our latest segments and events calendar. And I can assure you we have exciting events coming in the near term, so stay tuned. I want to wish everyone a great rest of your day.